Next up, 3-week sample size, Shovit. That means we can slowly start to predict what fantasy football is going to look like the rest of the season. Again, it's me, Sweetcar. I got Shovit, no Shishot for us today. 3 weeks in, man, you're 3-0 in your league. How are you feeling?
Yeah, I'm feeling, kind of weird. I'm glad to be 3-0. My receivers are doing really good with DK, Olave, and Justin Jefferson. But man, it's just one of those 3-0 starts where I know what's coming, and I know Najee Harris is gonna let me down as he already has. So it's great that I'm 3-0, but I feel like there's gonna be some turbulence now. Now that we've seen 3 weeks of football, yeah, it's a rough road.
Yeah, dude. I mean, and that's a great way to put it. But the flip side is you could have been turbulent and still been having to climb your way
True,
up. So
true.
you built yourself such a good buffer. Your wide receivers are stacked. All you need to do is try to figure out a way to, solidify some running back depth. You have Connor in our league, right? That's
Yeah,
Connor. Yeah. So
I
you
do.
have Connor. You ultimately just kind of need a second running back, and your lineup is pretty set. But no, it's cool to see. I posted it on our socials through 3 weeks. Shishot, number 1 in the league at 3
Number
and 0.
one.
Anil, number 2, don't care. Sorry, Anil. Number 3 is you at 3-0. So technically you're tied for first at 3-0. And then number 4 is me at 2-1. So it is cool to see that top 4 in the league is three of us. So obviously it's a really long season, right? Anything can
Yeah.
happen. You have one major injury and your entire season is just completely derailed. So it'll be fun to see how we can, keep pace with the rest of the league. But we have so much to talk about, Shovit. So much fantasy implications. So much happened. The Miami Dolphins look like they were playing
Oh,
college football this week.
right.
So we have to talk about that. Biggest fantasy football takeaways. Here we go. We're doing another bit. Week 3, biggest takeaways. Each of us highlight one big takeaway per game. Do you have anything you want to mention before we just kick it into gear?
No, dude, we got so much to talk about. Let's get right into it.
Perfect. This game happened so long ago, I forgot it existed. Thursday Night Football, the Giants and the 49ers played in San Francisco. 49ers took this one handedly 30-12, covered the 10.5-point spread, under 43.5 cashes. I will kick us off, Shovit. Here's the interesting nugget that I found from this game. It's something that has played out for the last 2-3 seasons now with the 49ers. We know that they have a plethora of weapons. We know that they can beat you every which way. What becomes a constant is when you have all of those weapons on the floor, there is usually one guy or one, even two guys sometimes, that do not perform up to par, right? But what typically tends to happen is the minute one guy, whether it's CMC, whether it's Debo, whether it's Ayuk, whether it's Kittle, is out, all of the other weapons seem to just go off. Like Kittle has great games when Ayuk is out. Debo has great games when Ayuk is out. If Debo's out, Ayuk goes off. The one constant's obviously CMC. He's always going to be there. But that's kind of the nature of the beast here. Is it's not like an offense that's force feeding one player. They can beat you 7,000 different ways. But you always want to keep in mind that if one of those guys is out and you have a roster of the other player, then they're an auto start. But flip side, when they're all playing, you never know as an Ayuk owner, as a Kittle owner, as a Debo owner, if you're just not going to be the focal point of the offense that week. So it is a glass half full, glass half empty situation there because you love the receiving end of what that offense can give you. But there's always that chance that when all healthy, your player could be the guy that doesn't quite play up to par. What was your biggest takeaway from this game?
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. Those 4 guys that you just mentioned, they are absolutely guys that you can start every week, including Ayuk. I think Ayuk didn't have a great game
Absolutely.
last week because he was injured. He had 3.4 points and he was down most of the game. And this game he's out. So Kittle, great game. CMC obviously, and then Debo had an awesome game. But also another guy that had a pretty decent game is Brock Purdy, right? So Brock Purdy had over 20 points in one of my leagues, and my cousin called me literally 5 minutes before the game. She's like, "Hey, I've got Joe Burrow and I've got Brock Purdy. Who should I start?" I said, "Start Brock Purdy," because I didn't know about Joe Burrow, and that's kind of player that Brock Purdy is. He's got so many weapons around him that he every week he's a streamable start. I mean, 3 touchdowns, 4 touchdowns is a little bit crazy. I think 1 touchdown. And
Guaranteed. I mean,
certainly,
I think he's
yeah,
almost thrown 2 a game. So yeah, absolutely.
right? So Brock Purdy from now until the end of the year, I think is going to be a streamable start. I forgot who we had on the podcast. He was like, "Hey, Brock Purdy as potentially
Joe
Joe,
Rico, big
right? Joe
Brock
Rico,
Purdy guy.
exactly. Like one of the last picks of the draft this year. He's like, you can go out and get Brock Purdy, and it's coming into fruition so far just because of the weapons around him.
Yeah, dude. I mean, it's crazy. Brock Purdy is a quarterback that is in a systematic offense, and he is fantasy relevant without rushing the football. So it's very unheard of because he's a guy that will not go drafted, right? There's so many quarterbacks that when you think of fantasy football, you're going to take over Brock, and Brock has probably one of the most consistent floors of any player in all of fantasy football, because all he does is win the games that he starts, and he's almost throwing 2 touchdowns every single game. So you have a floor, but Shove it, isn't there part of you that still has reservations when you have to put Brock Purdy in your lineup? Whether you want to admit it or not, you're like, this could be the game where the shoe finally drops, right? I finally start him. 8 games in a row, they win. 8 games in a row, 2 touchdown passes. Then you start him, and it's like, oh, wait, there's the last overall pick in the NFL draft, Brock Purdy. So it's one of those things that does happen. It's like a stigma that we put on a player based on, where they were drafted, what they've done in the past. But he could have totally just been a brand new player, and, that could be the past. And this could be the norm for Brock Purdy. It's just really, really hard to come to terms with. So definitely like the idea as a Deshaun Watson owner. I know he had a better week this week, but Brock Purdy is a guy that's constantly on waivers. So I'm always toying with that. So definitely like Big Cock Brock there. First game on the board Sunday, though, Tennessee Titans and the Cleveland Browns played. And man, I don't know how many years it's been since we talked about Titans football, and Derrick Henry is not the focal point, but that is one of the biggest talks of the town here. Browns win this in such a handed fashion, 27-3. Titans usually don't get blown out because they're good with the football. They run the football hard. They play good defense, but the Browns covered the 3.5 point spread under 38 cashes. I mean, Shovit, talk to me about Derrick Henry, Tajay Spears.
Dude, Derrick Henry, man, he's getting old, 30 years old. And if it's a negative game script, they're gonna pass the ball more, and they're showing that Tajay Spears is gonna be the guy that they give the ball or put him in passing downs. Then Derrick Henry, 56% snap count versus 38 of Derrick Henry. At this point, man, Derrick Henry is just not the same guy. It's time to start looking elsewhere.
Yeah, he's definitely not the auto start that he's been for a decade. It's crazy. We talked about it preseason, man. I had my reservations because running back age cliff happens so fast. You almost don't even have the ability to prepare for it, right? Like I said, last year, Henry was phenomenal. But every year you're like, is this the year? Is this the year? Is this the year? And with running backs, every year that they're getting older and older, there's that much more probability that it's that year. And now, like we talked about last week, they're just an old team. Tannehill's old. Hopkins is old. Henry's old. It's just getting old and stagnant. And Tajay Spears, honestly, when he's on the field, he's a breath of fresh air. So I think, the end is near for King Henry. He's been phenomenal, but I completely agree. If you have a Titans fan, if you can still get somebody to buy into the name King Henry and say, look, you're buying low at this product, and, make a valuable trade there, then you could potentially sell him. But I don't see a world where you should be trading for Derrick Henry, because nothing suggests that the workload's going to get better as the season progresses for a guy who's already 30 years old and getting older. So the future does not look bright for Derrick Henry. My thing that I want to highlight is the fantasy value of the Browns, particularly Watson, and how Watson goes. Where Watson goes is basically how Amari Cooper and now Elijah Moore go, right? Amari Cooper continues to be a staple as a receiver. He's been a solid wide receiver 2 in fantasy, fringe wide receiver 1 some years, but he's not like the JJ, Chase, Cup, that echelon, right? Deshaun Watson, when he was at his peak, was Mahomes' echelon quarterback, at least from a fantasy perspective. So if Watson slowly starts to look good, which this was by far the best game he's had as a Cleveland Brown, just no doubts about it, then I think there's a world where Amari Cooper is a wide receiver 1 on your fantasy football team. So Watson of Houston, to me, equals Amari Cooper of wide receiver 1 territory. I mean, this week he was 7 for 117 and a touchdown on 8 targets, and he got absolutely robbed by the ref, who just must have been blind, standing right there a foot away. He was nowhere near touching out of bounds. I mean, he could have been an entire foot length off of the line, and they called him out of bounds, ruled the play dead. So Cooper should have had 2 touchdowns, which would have made it an even more insane week. And I think the biggest stat that I'm watching out for Amari Cooper is Amari Cooper is constantly a guy that teeter-totters on the health system, right? So sometimes he's getting hurt, sometimes he's hobbled, dealing with a hamstring, groin, whatever the case may be. He was even injured last week, still played, still did well. Snap count. Week 1, 62% on the field. Week 2, 72% on the field. This past week, 80% on the field. The correlation between him getting healthier, seeing more snap count, Deshaun Watson getting better, this offense getting into the flow. Dude, Amari Cooper has a really, really nice chance to be a top 10 wide receiver finish this year if Deshaun Watson continues to play like the Deshaun Watson of old. So again, hand in hand, Cooper is going to go as far as Deshaun Watson goes. And that's kind of my biggest takeaway.
I agree with you. But I also think that same thing could also be said about Elijah Moore. Elijah Moore's snap counts and targets are just in line with what Amari Cooper's was last week. Now, Amari Cooper had the better result, but I think that if Deshaun Watson can figure, and this offense can be figure itself out, Jerome Ford didn't have that great of a game. Like, his efficiency was very bad. So I think that Elijah Moore is a good enough wide receiver that with the amount of volume that he's getting, he should see better production through as more games are played.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he's in a flex consideration for sure, week in and week out with the target share that he's seeing. The Lions hosted the Falcons 20-6. They win an ugly game, covered the 3.5-point spread. Another under hits 3 in a row, under 47. My biggest takeaway here, man, is we're going to keep talking about it. This was the battle of the rookie running backs, right? So this is probably what everybody wants to talk about. Let me talk about the Lions and Jahmyr Gibbs. Everybody talked about how Jahmyr Gibbs may not get the work over the middle, up the middle. We even talked about it. We saw a world where, you know what, Craig Reynolds is here. He's probably going to assume the Montgomery role. Gibbs is not going to get used inside. He's going to continue to get used the way he is. Dan Campbell said, nope. That is not the case. 17 carries for 80 yards. You love to see the volume. You love to see the efficiency, a little over 4 yards a carry. But with that came the fact that his passing usage went down, right? He only had 1 catch for 2 yards on two targets, I believe. And keep in mind, Craig Reynolds carried the ball 4 times for 15 yards. Even Bam Knight, that they signed and elevated, carried the ball 3 times for 13 yards. So what does this tell me? They're still never going to give Gibbs that full workload, but they feel comfortable giving him 17 to 20 touches, I think. And I think with that, he can still be a 4 to 6 target weapon out of the backfield. It's just about putting it all together. We saw Gibbs getting targeted heavily week 2, not running the ball much. This week he ran the ball more, didn't get targeted as much. Once it all comes together, I promise you this Gibbs product is going to pay dividends. Just stay patient.
Yeah, I agree with you. I wasted a waiver pick on Reynolds, and I wish I hadn't done that. But yeah, man, seeing Gibbs going up the middle and getting those kind of carries that I thought Reynolds would have, that was definitely a good sight for Gibbs owners. For me, it's the Bijan versus Algier conversation, and mostly it's like, oh, it's got to be Bijan, right? But I'm not so. I think that there's a world where Algier could definitely start week in, week out, but not week in, week out. It's gonna have to be matchup dependent, right? Now, the Detroit Lions were favored by 3.5 points. Lions, the better team. Falcons had to come back from behind, and Desmond Ridder having to throw the ball to his receivers. It didn't work. Now, if there's a game where you're like, okay, Falcons have a chance to win this game, like against the Jets, against the Saints, Cardinals, Commanders, maybe the Texans is a little bit a stretch, but some of those other teams, then you start him. So he's the guy that you keep on your bench. But if you have to decide between, like, I don't know, Jerry Jeudy versus Algier, I'm gonna lean Jerry Jeudy because I know I can get PPR points. Whereas Algier, touchdown dependent, he's got to get carries. Bijan Robinson saw 81% of the snap count in a negative game script. He's gonna be the guy that gets most of the ball. Algier sometimes use him, not every week.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I think taking it even further, look at teams that have bad running defenses, right? Because the goal is the Falcons want to run. They want to run down your throat. One guy, if they have success with the run, which is what they're predicated on, they can't run Bijan 40 times because they will run the football 40 to 50 times a game, which means Algier has to get work. So like you said, matchup dependent, Tyler Algier is a guy that continues to need to be rostered on your team. Obviously, you're a Bijan injury away from a 1,000-yard carrier in Algier from last year. But even if Bijan continues to play, like you said, running teams continue to run the football. And if you're getting into a situation where, we saw what the Eagles did last night and what they continue to do rushing the football, like if the Falcons can sustain that level of rushing success, which so far they have, except this weird random game against the Lions, then yes, both guys can continue to be used. You hit the note on here. I wanted to talk about it before we move on to the next game. Sam Laporta, man, give this man his credit. He is the number 2 tight end in fantasy football, number 2 in targets. Shishot was all over this. I think he has both tight ends. Even myself, I think for me, it was more so that twofold. Iowa is the school of tight ends, right? We have schools that have become certain skill position schools. Iowa for tight ends, Ohio State and LSU for receivers, right? Alabama for running backs and receivers and every other player, obviously. But there are certain schools that just continue to put out good players. And then, you have the whole Ohio State and quarterbacks are awful, which again, Justin Fields not helping the case. So there is this stigma around that, but Iowa tight ends are fantastic. And he comes from this tight end line. He's coming into a system where there was literally an Iowa tight end that was getting the same usage. They traded him away, got a younger version of him. What made us believe that they were going to use Laporta any differently than Hawkinson, right? There was no reason to believe that. They didn't go out and sign another receiver to take the top off. They tried to with Williams, but he's suspended. So that work is going to continue to happen over the middle. Laporta is going to flourish. He's still a free agent in my other league, bro. People still don't understand the Sam Laporta situation. So go out and get this guy. If he is still a free agent, he is going to be a plug and play tight end that you possibly don't have to worry about for the whole season. And that's something that outside of Travis Kelce, you can never say. You rarely can ever say. So Laporta stock continues to climb. Before you know it, he's going to be in top 5 consideration. Packers and Saints, what a wild one in Lambeau. The Packers were down 17-0. Derek Carr gets hurt, and then they come back and win 18-17. They cover the 1.5-point dog spread. Another under 41.5 cashes. Shove it. Talk to me about this Carr injury and what that means for fantasy.
Yeah, Derek Carr injury. Well, first, what it means for the Saints, that sucks because Jameis Winston produced 0 points. What it means for fantasy owners and Chris Olave owners is that when Winston has played in 3 games, Olave averages 15.3 points and 9.7 targets. I mean, guy loves airing it out. Olave loves running deep and he has like one of the most air yards as well. So I think that marriage with Winston Olave is going to fare really well if Carr is out. Now, Carr, I'm not sure. He might play. He might not. It's week to week. But if Winston plays, Olave owners, rejoice.
Yeah, dude. I mean, that's one thing we know about Jameis Winston. 30 interceptions, don't care. Going to keep throwing the football, right? So he loves to sling it. And Olave, like you said, air yards leader. He's got the most receiving yards without a touchdown so far this year. So the man is due. And man, is he good, right? Like he is just so smooth with everything he does. One-handed catches, tiptoeing on the sidelines. It's just a treat to watch. Talking on the other side, let's talk about the Packers and their skill positions. Christian Watson continues to have this hamstring injury. They said he said that's the plan when they asked him if he's going to play this Thursday. It's still a short week. He's still dealing with the hamstring. Romeo Doubs, to me, continues to get unappreciated, right? And it's a weird situation because Jordan Love's efficiency, where he's thrown X amount of passes and he has X amount of touchdown passes already this year, is not sustainable. Like his efficiency is insane. I think he's number 1 in the league right now. That is just not sustainable. But what is sustainable is the fact that Christian Watson continues to be injury prone. We don't know. And he's a fast burner, right? A fast burner having a hamstring problem seems like a recipe for disaster. We don't have our doctor on the episode today, but I'm almost certain from everything I've taken away from Shishot over the years, that's one thing I can put together myself. With that being said, everyone wants to jump on this Jaden Reed train, which is cool. It's nice, but he's also like a smaller gadget type receiver they're going to use with end arounds. So again, long story short, a team has to have one receiver that they can rely on to throw the football when they need to throw the football. And as ugly as like the whole situation has been for Green Bay, I still think that's Romeo Doubs. I still believe that's Romeo Doubs. It hasn't played out that way. Obviously, when Watson comes on the field, he's electric because he's so fast, but I still think Romeo Doubs is going to be there week in and week out. And also one guy that does not need to go unnoticed, Luke Musgrave, man. Luke Musgrave, 6'6", 255 pounds, literally is Gronk, like Gronk 2.0. He would have had a clear touchdown of like 30 yards across the middle of Jordan Love, and just sail that pass. And we'd be having a whole nother discussion about why is Luke Musgrave a free agent? Because he's seeing the targets. He's got a rookie, or not a rookie, but basically a rookie first-year quarterback who's starting. And we know that they love their tight ends. And we're wondering about who the receivers are going to be that's going to step up. The one thing that I know is Luke Musgrave is going to be a factor the rest of this season. I don't know how much, but with the tight end position the way it is, I'm going to continue to try to take risks on young tight ends that have high upside versus let me go out and grab that Hunter Henry, man. Hopefully he gets into the end zone again. He's nice. He continues to score touchdowns, but I want the upside because the variable outcomes of tight ends is just way too vast. So Christian Watson's out. Look at Romeo Doubs. Let's not overlook Romeo Doubs. And Luke Musgrave, man, we'll be talking about him about 3 or 4 weeks saying, oh man, he's the other Laporta in this season. So those are my tidbits in that game. Anything else you want to talk about there?
No, that's solid. I mean, 8 targets. Hunter Henry is not getting 8 targets. So that's solid. Yeah.
You might get 1 target, 1 touchdown, but you know, so sometimes that might work for you, but it is a dicey game to play. A game that wasn't dicey for the Dolphins at all, in which they absolutely steamrolled the Broncos. The Broncos should have just quit. They should have thrown in the towel. It got so disgusting to the point where they were running the same play and just still scoring touchdowns on the play back-to-back times. 70-20, the Dolphins won. Let me repeat that. 70-20. 70 points the Dolphins hung on the Denver Broncos, the Sean Payton-led Denver Broncos, the Denver Broncos that have always historically been known to have somewhat of a respectable defense. It was insane, man. I don't even know where to start. I don't even know what to take away from this game because everything seems like an anomaly. So let me let you talk about this first. I don't even know how to gather my thoughts about this game.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing here is Miami Dolphins players and specifically Devon Achane. He's going to be the top waiver wire pickup this week. 4 touchdowns, 18 carries, 203 yards. Like, how do you not try and go out and grab this guy? I understand Raheem Mostert's on the team. And out of Mostert, Tyreek Hill, and Achane, like, I want to know who the fastest guy is because out of the people that have reached the top speed in the NFL this week, it's been those 3 guys at like 20, 21, 20. It's ridiculous. Dude. So go and spend a waiver wire pickup on Achane. I will try to do that. Let's see if I get lucky. If not, I mean, I'll cry.
Yeah, I mean, so here's what I'll say. It was insane. One of the greatest performances ever. As a Raheem, if somebody owned Raheem Mostert and to think he scored 4 touchdowns and he wasn't the highest scoring running back on his own team in fantasy for that week, you would have thought that was the worst. That was the stupidest thing you've ever heard, right? And here we are, right? Raheem Mostert had like 40 something fantasy points and he didn't even have the most fantasy points on his own team from the running back position. It makes no sense. So what do we know? And by the way, real quickly, one thing that the PSA came out on the pronunciation of his name, and all of a sudden his name is pronounced Devon Achane. It's not Chain. It's Achane. So
that's kind of a letdown because
big time
sounds like A Train. So like, I like that.
So many opportunities for wordplay with Achane, and then all of a sudden you have Achan, and all I can think of is like Jackie Chan. So it's going to take me a little minute to think about other word plays, but yes, it's Devon Achane. And here's what we know. They love Raheem Mostert. Raheem Mostert came from San Francisco. That's where Mike McDaniel came from. They have another guy who's going to come back in 2 weeks. Jeff Wilson came from San Francisco. He loves him. Mike McDaniel brought those guys from San Francisco, plugged him here. Devon Achane's biggest knock was he's a burner, but his size does not dictate the fact that he can be a 3-down workhorse, and he can't. But when you're this fast and the seams and the lanes that they're creating on that offense for you require you to just not be touched, it doesn't matter what size you are if you're running 4.3 speed, right? But this level is just absolutely not sustainable. It's going to be a 3-headed backfield, obviously. Are there going to be weeks where he pops off? Yes, because he could have one run and it could be 75 yards and a touchdown, right? You could roll the dice on him any week and he could be a boom for you. He could also be a bust for you. So yes, everybody wants to go out there and be like, guy put up 55 points, 50 points. I have to scoop him up. And you do. Don't get me wrong. You need to go out and get him. But once you get him, you need to temper your expectations a little bit, knowing the situation that he puts himself in. So that is what I'll say about Devon Achane. Ugly side on the Broncos, but we still have to talk about it. Some silver linings playbook here. The receivers on the Broncos produced. Well, when you're down 50, you kind of have to, right? Shove it. You have to throw the football. Cortland Sutton had 8 for 91 and a touchdown. Jerry Jeudy 5 for 81. Is it going to take them being down 50 every week to finally get the receivers involved? God, I hope not. I would like to believe that Sean Payton is slowly trying to work to figure out this offense. So I think there's a world where we continue to see more Jeudy, more Sutton, just because we're going to have to. This defense isn't as good as people thought they were. In fact, they might be worse. So if they're going to be playing from behind a lot, you have Samaje Perine and Javonte Williams who's coming back from injury. The running game hasn't been that effective. That's all you got. Either you're going to have to throw the football or you're going to continue to lose football games by 50 points. So I think Jerry Jeudy and Cortland Sutton stock incredibly low. Sutton's a free agent in my other league. So they are available. People are looking to get rid of them. I'm still not giving up on Jerry Jeudy, the talent. So I would still go out and trade for him with the hopes that somebody is going to have to get volume there. They're going to have to be down. So they are going to have to throw the football.
They play the Bears next week. And you saw what the Chiefs did to the Bears. But you saw what the Dolphins did to the Broncos. So it's hard, but I think that matchup wise, like if you're going to deploy Sutton or Jeudy, it's this week against Bears.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. Another really good football game. 2 teams that just continue to want to give the other team an opportunity to win the football game. The Chargers and the Vikings played a good game. 28-24 Chargers win on the road, cover the 1-point dog spread. Another under cashes under 54. My biggest takeaway here is the Quentin Johnston situation. Mike Williams is out for season. unfortunate. He was having a great year. The Kellen Moore offense was finally opening things up for him. But you have a first-round rookie in Quentin Johnston on the roster where obviously you expect, hey, this is a situation where a first-round draft pick is going to step up, right? Naturally. Here are the reservations with Quentin Johnston. My fear with him even coming into the draft was that he has such a limited route tree. He is very limited in what he can do. He is electric. He is fast. He is big. But when he's so big, but doesn't use his size to high point the football. He's so fast, but he's not elusive and quick with running routes. So it's very much like, are you going to give him screen passes and hope he takes it free? Are you going to run him go routes? He's going to be limited. I mean, he's seeing I think through 3 games, he's seeing like 26 or 27% snap share for a first round receiver, man. That is a red flag. So here was what I'm thinking. In the short term, he's not the guy you get it. You could get him because he's a rookie receiver. The upside is high and he could boom. But short term, if you're looking for somebody you have to plug in, it's Joshua Palmer. Joshua Palmer's a nice player. He's not a superstar. He's been given this opportunity before. He doesn't like thrive in it, but he does enough. So if you're desperate, you need receivers. Mike Williams is out for season for you. Palmer's the guy that in the short term as a plug and play, he can be nice. Herbert looks awesome. The new offense looks awesome. That could mean that Palmer's actually going to be better than we've seen him be in the past as a plug-in player. But I think Palmer's the guy you get as a short-term fix. Quentin Johnston's the guy you can stash if you're in a dynasty league or if you have a bigger bench and hope for some upside down the road.
Yeah, dude. Somebody asked me that today, and that's exactly what I told them. Like, if you just lost Mike Williams and you got to start someone, a receiver next week, I would say Tank Dell is going to be the number one guy that you get. If he's not available, then you have to go out and get Joshua Palmer because Quentin Johnston. Yeah, I mean, we'll see. But the fact that, like you said, that they've been lowering his snap counts, haven't deployed him like the rookie receivers that we've seen this year, Addison, Zay Flowers. That's certainly like a red flag. But for me, man, the biggest thing is like, fool me once, shame on me, fool me twice.
I want to throw up. I want to throw up hearing this guy's name.
Joshua Kelly, man. I'm sorry I have to say this, but like we thought he was going to be like the Eckler guy, but, the perfect replacement for Eckler while he's down, given his like 98 yards and a touchdown that week 1 that he had. But how fluke was that, man? Like, and the efficiency is not there against a Vikings defense that like where Swift ran over the Vikings the week prior. You thought that Kelly would have that same sort of production, and he's not. And you know what truly truly sucks about this is like next week is the last week that you could potentially play Kelly, and they're playing against the Raiders, right?
Great matchup,
right? And so it's like, do I go with Kelly again or not?
No,
honestly,
no, don't do it, dude. Dude, I played this game. There's not a worse defense to start rushing on than the Vikings. You just said it. And we saw Kelly put together a performance where I'm like, how is this guy in the NFL? Like, I'm sorry, man. I don't want to be too hard on players because they're in the NFL and they made it to the biggest stage of them all. But Joshua Kelly, to me, does not look like a NFL running back. He is terrible at finding the holes. He is terrible at making a decision. Like, he is, unless it's a gaping hole and he can run straight, which is what all of the week 1 runs basically were, because Austin Eckler was out and they were like, oh, maybe they won't run. Oh, they ran and Kelly was wide open. And now when he's the guy, he is awful. So yes, this week, Eckler probably won't play. They have a bye week next week. This is your last chance to start Kelly, but do yourself a favor and just drop him so you don't toy with the idea of starting him. I've already put in a waiver claim for somebody else and I'm dropping Kelly because I don't want to be there on Sunday and be like, dude, the green on this matchup against the Raiders looks kind of nice. Maybe he bounces back. Nope. Screw you, Joshua Kelly. I want no part of you. Oh man, sorry. That was so frustrating because you and I talked about it all Sunday, man. Right. I was just toying with the idea of benching or starting Joshua Kelly, and the fact that I started him and the fact that he produced or did not produce what he did not produce was just abysmal. The New York Jets look awful. Please get a new quarterback. The Patriots came into town. This was disgusting, but the Patriots won this game 15-10 because they have a good defense and they're playing against Zach Wilson. They covered the 2.5 point spread, another under 35.5 cashes. Shovit, talk to me about what you saw in this game.
Yeah, so I'm going to talk to Stevenson owners right now, right? So Zeke saw 16 carries. Stevenson saw 19 carries, but Zeke produced more with 80 yards and then 59 for Stevenson. Stevenson was definitely used more on passing downs than Zeke. So you got to think, like, what do you make of this? I think that you still go with Stevenson. Like, it's okay. Like, he didn't have a great fantasy-wise game, but they still came out with the win. But Zeke is certainly a guy that could be on your bench that you have to consider, especially for next week against the Cowboys at Dallas.
Revenge game.
you know Zeke wants to get in, and you know he's gonna be trucking that much harder. And I like the efficiency that I saw. That I am considering if I am a Zeke owner and he's on my bench, or if he's there, and I have, like, for example, Najee Harris or Zeke. There's a strong case to be made.
Oh, there's very few players you could get me to be like, I'm taking Najee over them right now to start, dude, to be honest with you.
True. Yeah. But my point is that Stevenson owners, if you have Stevenson, it's okay. It's just one of those games. But if you have Zeke on your bench, you can consider deploying Zeke next week.
Yeah, dude, throw all the stats out the window, throw all the analytics out the window. The biggest number one indicator of a player's success, revenge game. Revenge game to me. Revenge game. Adam Thielen this week is going to go off on the Vikings, dude. So Zeke is going to go off on the Cowboys. And so I'm a Stevenson owner, and I'm with you. I have no reason to panic. I think he saw a good amount of carries. He's their passing down guy. And it was pouring rain in New York, right? It was a disgusting football game. And I think the passing situation for Stevenson weren't ideal because the Jets have a good defense. So I think that allowed Zeke to get more work in. They were just running the football more. I think there is a world where Zeke is relevant. I think he can vulture touchdowns, definitely play the revenge factor. I just think you have to basically be in the Najee situation or an even worse running back situation to contemplate. Dude, yes. If your number one running back was Eckler, he went down and all of a sudden you went no other running backs and Kelly's your guy. Yes, play Zeke over Kelly. But I am telling you, like the Zeke thing is worrisome just because what's best case scenario for Zeke, right? Best case scenario for Zeke is he has to find the end zone because I don't think Zeke's a 100-yard rusher anymore. He's not catching passes, right? So the best case for him is what, 70 to 80 rushing yards, maybe. So like you're playing with a floor of 7 to 8 points, hoping he falls into the end zone. So yes, bye weeks, you're desperate. It's Najee who's not even getting you 5. Yes, play Zeke. But other than that, I do still have my reservations, but it's a long season, man. You definitely don't know. Speaking of a long season, you would think the Jets, knowing that it's a long season, knowing that they have a great team, knowing that they're a quarterback away, they would do something about it. I mean, I could sit here, shove it, and I played this game with myself, and I don't want to play this game with you because it's just so dumb, and I feel bad for Zach Wilson when you play this game. But I sat there and just typed out a list of every quarterback I could think of that I would take over Zach Wilson, and I'm pretty sure I got to like 58 names. 50. That's more than all the starting quarterbacks in the NFL, man. Like 58 names, bro. It's insane. I mean, how many quarterbacks could you have handed the football down 5 at your own 45 with a minute 45 left, 3 timeouts? You're down 5. So touchdown wins the football game. You have all 3 timeouts. You're basically at midfield. How many quarterbacks win that game?
Yeah.
Dude,
yeah, I mean,
Zach, you want to hear Zach Wilson's 4 plays when they got the football? Incompletion. 4th and 10, he throws a 2-yard dump pass to the tight end. I saw that. I was like, if that possession was me being like, if after this, Robert Saleh comes onto the microphone after this game and just definitively goes, Zach Wilson's our guy, I'm going to start to be like, Robert Saleh, I think you need to go get some help because you cannot be serious. And then he did do that. He did exactly that. So, I mean, I am just so baffled at how much this is affecting this team. And I'll take it even further in fantasy, Shovid. Zach Wilson's not just hindering Garrett Wilson. Zach Wilson's not just hindering the entire defense and everything. Zach Wilson is affecting Breece Hall's fantasy output. They can stack 9 in the box. You could have Zach Wilson be basically having a 1 safety and like everybody else is blitzing. Hey, Zach, you have 4 guys running open. Just throw the pass to one of them. He would not make the right pass. He would not complete it. He's that bad. So Breece Hall, a stud running back right now, is unplayable because defense is stacked 9 in the box. So Zach Wilson's not only hurting Garrett Wilson, he's not only hurting the Jets. He's not only hurting like just NFL enjoyers trying to watch football and like watch an NFL quarterback be competent. He's hurting Breece Hall, who is an absolute stud. So they need to find a replacement. They need to find him fast. It's not going to be very long before you're 1-4, 1-5. And then at that point, you're like, even if we bring a new guy in, he's going to have to learn the playbook. He's going to have to get acclimated. And at that point, like you're going to have to make a miraculous run just to get into the playoffs. So please act now. Otherwise, Breece Hall, Garrett Wilson, all those guys on the Jets that we loved, we wanted to talk about all offseason about fantasy. You just flush them all down the toilet.
Yeah. And the silver lining here is that they did go out and get a quarterback. They got Trevor Siemian. So,
that's the silverest of linings, man.
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing though. Like I think it was like efficiency versus yards, some kind of stats where like, it's like a graph and whoever's on the top right is the highest and then whoever's on the bottom left is the lowest. And sure enough, There he is, like the bottom left. And so anything is better than Zach Wilson. So I'm putting my money on Trevor Siemian. If he comes back, hopefully he can learn the playbook and
he can't be worse. He can't be worse.
No. Yeah, that fourth down play was just ridiculous.
Oh,
like, to
God.
The right. I don't think he was pressured either. Yeah. I think he just like dumped it off.
It was like a first read play, but yeah, dude, know the situation. Like, I don't care that he's your first read and he's open. It's a 2-yard pass. Like, what are you doing? Oh man, just brutal stuff there. Let's kick it to the Bills and Commanders. Bills win this one handedly in Washington, 37-3, annihilation. Covered the 5-point spread, another under 44 cashes. I'll make this one quick, man. Bills defense look legit, 32 fantasy points. This was one of the games where they put it all together, and against a Commanders team that is underrated, that, we were like, Sam Howell's kind of making steps. They have good weapons. The Bills defense looked the real deal, but the Bills defense gets to play 70-point Mike McDaniel, Tua, and gang next week. So fake news, real deal. Time will tell there, Shovit. What did you see in this game?
Yeah, I can't wait. We're gonna find out a lot about the Bills. Are they for real? For me, I'm a Dalton Kincaid owner, so I'm trying to look at like why Dalton Kincaid wasn't utilized. He only saw two targets, but I think it's just because of the script against the Commanders. Early lead, and they just didn't have any reason. Diggs got a lot of targets. Dalton Kincaid didn't see as much, but he was on the field. He's on the field just as much as Dawson Knox was. So we talk about a lot of rookie tight ends, Musgrave, Sam Laporta. I think Dalton Kincaid can be that guy, but I want to see how this game against Miami goes. If Miami starts putting up points and they don't give the ball to Dalton Kincaid, then I'm going to start getting worried.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a great week to watch. I'm still not worried about Kincaid either because I also believe in the talent. The Houston Texans are for real, man, and it's time to start wondering what is wrong with the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Texans come into town, and they put a ass whooping on the Jaguars, 37-17. They cover the 7.5-point dog spread and win the game outright, over 43.5 cashes. I want to talk about the Jacksonville Jaguars and Calvin Ridley. I traded for Calvin Ridley. I was high on Calvin Ridley, and here's why I'm still not worried about Calvin Ridley. The offense looks bad. At times, they look very dysfunctional. Calvin Ridley, the very first possession of this game, had like a 30-yard touchdown pass just go right off his fingertips, just straight drop. He should have caught it. So if he catches that, I think we're having an entirely different conversation about Calvin Ridley. I might not even bring up Calvin Ridley. I'd be like, you know what? He's good. We're not worried about it. But the problem is the target share went from like 31% week 1 to like 17% week 2, all the way down to like 10% in week 3. The Jaguars have a plethora of weapons. Well, who's a good weapon? Who's a great weapon? Who's kind of a sus weapon? I'll let everybody else be the judge of that. But they got players. They got Ingram. They got Kirk. They got Jones, right? So they have players to throw the football to. I'm convinced that Trevor Lawrence is that kind of guy that loves to spread the football around. But I am still convinced that Calvin Ridley is the most talented weapon on their football team. So if he catches that touchdown, he actually had another drop too. If he catches that touchdown, then again, we're not worried about him at all. I still think Calvin Ridley is a guy that's going to end up having a great year. But it is definitely something that's worth monitoring.
Yeah, I mean, there's that twice in 2 weeks now, right? Like last week too, there were so many opportunities for Ridley to get in the zone, get in the touchdown, and it's like 1 foot was out or got pushed out, and so it's kind of unfortunate. But I think regression, right? Regression to for the better. For me, the guy I'm looking at, like I said, Mike Williams got hurt, so you're trying to get Josh Palmer. But I think the guy you need to target is Tank Dell. Tank Dell should be a higher pick, waiver wire pick this week for any Mike Williams owners. 5 receptions, 140 yards, 1 touchdown. And dude, CJ Stroud, dude, we talked about how this guy should be the first quarterback drafted. He is gelling right now. Like that team is last week too, like 3 touchdowns this week as well. I think that everything is working well for the Texans offense, and I think Tank Dell is going to be a great beneficiary of that.
Yeah, dude. I looked at Tank Dell and I was like, he's a small receiver, so he can make his money being a slot guy and catching a lot of passes. But dude, they throw him bombs. Like he's fast, he gets all the over the top stuff, and he gets all the slot stuff. And he is in a situation where, like you said, the Texans are going to have to throw the football a lot, and he's not just a guy that's like the benefactor of that. Tank Dell's good. I think Tank Dell is a really good football player. So it's not going to be before long where Tank Dell is a wide receiver 1 on that team over Nico Collins. And it's not long before we're like, Tank Dell, top 20 receiver in football. So if Stroud continues to sling it, because that's what it's seeming like. I mean, I think he broke the record, or he's 3rd all time for most passing yards by a rookie through his first 3 games. Maybe Justin Herbert was the only other guy. So dude, he is slinging it. And it's not just, he's kind of slinging it. He is absolutely slinging it. So it is nice to see when we talked about it on this podcast. Bryce Young's the consensus number 1. I feel like we all were like, it's almost like a narrative that the national media has put out there that I'm having a hard time not going against, right? And don't get me wrong, he was really good, but CJ Stroud, to me, that game that we saw against Georgia is a better tape of CJ Stroud than any other game of Bryce Young's tape on any other game he played. And I will take that to the grave. The way CJ Stroud played against Georgia, that tape for an NFL evaluator was better than every single game Bryce Young played against anybody. So that is the single game that I took away that made me, have the take I did. Was that foolish because it's a really small sample size? Maybe, but right now we're looking awful smart. So CJ Stroud looks great and the Texans are formidable. I was texting Anish about it. He's super hopeful. Nice to see Texans fans finally back on board there.
Nice.
Another upset show of it. The Baltimore Ravens at home hosting a Gardner Minshew-led Colts. And the Gardner Minshew-led Colts win in overtime, 22-19. They cover the 7.5-point dog spread under 44 cashes. Zay Flowers on the Ravens, man. 33% target share, leading the team. This offense is still not flowing the way it's supposed to be. New offensive coordinator, new scheme, new design. Lamar Jackson's supposed to be opening up the passing game. But no, he's still running like Lamar is, still feeding Andrews. But I think the goal of this offense is to get where we think it's going to get, and that's going to be more passing. And even with less passing right now, Zay Flowers is getting all the targets, right? Andrews was back, and Zay Flowers is still getting a lot of the targets. So the offense not having quite figured it out yet, Zay is continuing to getting used the way he is. To me, that just means that the sky's the limit, and once this offense figures it out, Zay is a complete boom candidate. So to me, Zay Flowers, you're continuing to start him because of the targets, and I think his talent and skill level on the field is something that you can just see jump off. So it's just a matter of time before this new offensive design figures it out, hopefully with Lamar. And so to me, Zay, production not great, yards not great, still saw a ton of targets and catches. So I would not be worried one bit. What about you? What did you see this game?
Yeah, not worried at all. But for me, man, I'm looking at Zach Moss, and I think there's only two things that can stop Zach Moss from being Zach Moss and producing. And that one is Zach Moss himself if he gets injured. And number two is Jonathan Taylor, which is looking less and less likely for Jonathan Taylor to have any sort of leverage this year, given how well Zach Moss is playing. I say you ride it. You ride Zach Moss until you can't ride it anymore. Just let him do what he's doing. I mean, 30 carries on 122 yards. Dude, this is 2023 and he's getting 30 carries. Like, what other running back is getting that much? Like, you just got to keep riding this. And congratulations to Zach Moss owners. Like, just enjoy.
Oh, dude, it's hilarious, Shovit. Not CMC, not Barkley, not Pollard, not Eckler. All these first-round guys, not Derrick Henry. None of them are sniffing 30 carries. Not a single. Yeah. Who has touched the ball 30 times right now? Nobody. I'm trying to go back and think, and I don't think a running back this year, which I'm going to have to fact check this, man. Zach Moss might be the first 30 carry running back of the season. I can't think of another player. That's insane. That is just insane stuff from some guy that everybody discredited. He's not very good, whatever. Like, he's just a guy thrown in there because Jonathan Taylor's hurt. Deion Jackson got hobbled, but no, man, Moss is the real deal. The Seattle Seahawks hosted the Carolina Panthers at home, shootout 37-27 final. They win the game, cover the 4.5 point spread over 43 cashes. Shovit, Miles Sanders on the Panthers. What are you seeing from him?
Dude, I'm just looking at any running back that's not Najee Harris, trying to see if I can go out and get this player. And I'm looking at Miles Sanders right now, and I see a guy that has 9 targets, playing the Lions next week, who can put up points. Might be a negative game script. Might be a negative game script for Panthers all throughout this year. So I'm seeing Miles Sanders as a great buy low target. I think you can definitely bank on those PPR points. So good things coming from Miles Sanders. 52 snaps versus 27 for Chuba Herbert. All pointing to the right direction.
Yeah, dude, I think he's second in the NFL in our running back targets, which is insane for Miles Sanders. So yeah, right. Like that is such a great play. You need to find players that are getting work, but it's not translating to statistics that casuals care about. And then you need to feed them Najee Harris. Be like, dude, Miles Sanders sucks. Take Najee. At least he's got carries. Right? So, dude, I'm absolutely with you. Buy low candidate just because of the target share, just because they're going to be down. Bryce Young's going to come back. His offensive line sucks. Receivers struggle to get open. He's going to be running with the chicken, like a chicken with his head cut off. What's he going to do? He's going to dump the football off. So Miles Sanders, absolutely. Speaking of that same team, Andy Dalton's starting right now. He started last week, but Bryce Young is the quarterback of the future. So it's a weird dilemma here for fantasy versus reality. Obviously, Andy Dalton's not anybody, right? He's just a journeyman. He's just a backup. But when Dalton plays, the Panthers actually do better. Adam Thielen and DJ Chark become wide receiver 3s. I mean, Thielen, shit, with the target share, he could become a borderline wide receiver 2 with Dalton. But the problem is, I think next week Bryce Young's back. So that just means those guys are back to not being fantasy relevant, at least in my opinion. Thielen, revenge game against the Vikes, coming off of 2 really good performances. I think you could still roll the dice with Thielen as your flex spot. Really desperate in a deeper league, wide receiver 2. But otherwise, Chark probably not. But if Dalton does play, if Bryce Young's injury lingers, both Chark and Thielen seem like wide receiver 3 or flex spots for me. The Kansas City Chiefs had an easy matchup at home against the Chicago Bears and Justin Fields. 41-10, they win this game. Taylor Swift was in the house. Travis Kelce was getting touchdowns left and right. Taylor Swift saying, let's fucking go. Whose bingo card was that on this season? Not mine. But what I want to talk about is not Taylor Swift, not the Chiefs. We know about the Chiefs, man. We know about the Chiefs. The Chiefs are exactly who we thought they were. They're always going to be that way. You don't learn anything new from them from a fantasy perspective. What I do know is that right now, in this moment, Shovit, there is not a single Chicago Bear that you can start in fantasy football. There just is not. You cannot start Justin Fields. You can't do it, man. And don't tell me about his matchup this week because it is nice and it makes you want to start him again. But you cannot start Justin Fields. Why can't you start Justin Fields? Is because the one thing he's good at doing, all of a sudden, he's not doing it. It's not that he's doing it badly. He's not even doing it as frequently as you want him to. So the problem is that they are trying to make him something he's not, which obviously helps the team, helps the future to see if he's got it. But for fantasy, that helps us none. It helps us zero zilch. So do I still see a world where Fields could rip off a 60-yard touchdown run? Absolutely. Dude's built like a freak show, right? But when he can't throw the football, all of a sudden defenses are no longer, they're going to spy him. They're going to be like, dude, throw the football. You can have 10 seconds. You can have 15 seconds. Don't care. And so if he can't do that, there is not a player you can start. You can't start Khalil Herbert. Roshan Johnson's stealing that backfield, man. What did I say? He is stealing that backfield. Problem is they suck. So they could put 10 in the box because Fields can't throw and Roshan Johnson can't go anywhere. So do not start a Bears player right now. I do see a world where there are some waivers that you're going to be part of in leagues where Fields gets dropped. I think you still pick him up because the upside is there, right? You stash him on your bench because the upside is there. I don't think if you're a Fields owner, you necessarily drop him, but you do not start him this week. You just can't, man. You can't do it to yourself 4 weeks in a row. You can't do it.
Yeah, man, he lost me this week. I had, Chris Olave, Sam Laporta, Chase, Nakua, Moody as one of the better kickers. And it's because of his 12.5 points in like a QB favored league, where the QB did not favor my team. But for me, I look at this and luckily I've got Anthony Richardson. And if he comes back, then I start Anthony Richardson, right? But against the Broncos, man, I'm going to give it a week. And that's my point. I'm going to give it one more week. And I know everyone's saying to bench Justin Fields, but I am hopeful that he will get out of this trying to pass the ball. Just run the ball, dude. Just do what you're good at. Just get some yards, some touchdowns. And I'm going to roll the dice one more week before I say no if I don't have any other options.
That's fair. I respect it, man. I'm in a similar situation. I get with a guy like Darren Waller, just been horrific. Offense is horrific. No Saquon Barkley, but they have such a nice matchup this week that I'm like, I'm going to start Darren Waller. So, I mean, I don't fault the person who's the owner. It's so easy to be a guy that doesn't own the player and be like, don't do it. But when you're the owner, you have this weird emotional attachment. You drafted the player. You had these visions of what you thought you were going to get. So you're like, man, maybe I can recreate some of that magic at least for 1 week. So I don't hate it one bit because the upside is still tremendous with Fields.
Yeah.
Dude, another upset on the board. Tell me if you saw this coming. There's nobody in all of America, in my opinion, not even the Cardinals, not even their fans, not even Joshua Dobbs, not even their coach, not even Jonathan Gannon, came into this game being like, we're going to beat the Cowboys. But what did they do? They beat the Cowboys, man. And they didn't just beat them. They beat them bad. 28-16. They covered the 11-point dog spread to win the game outright. 44 pushes. Man, at what point did the Jets make a call to the Arizona Cardinals about Joshua Dobbs? And I'm not even joking, bro. I'm not joking. You can get him for free. They could send back a penny for Joshua Dobbs because he's worth nothing. And he could play a better brand of football than Zach Wilson. There are so many guys like this out there. This is becoming more of a Jets conversation, but the Cardinals don't have a lot of fantasy, value, in my opinion, over the long season. You're going to talk about one of the guys that do. The Cowboys, I scrapped this game. It's hard to contextualize this game, but Cowboys have these kind of games where you're just like, man, that looked really bad. What can you take away from it? Not a whole lot. Like, let's just dump it out the window and just regroup. That's probably what Dallas is doing. So for me, the Cardinals need to play worse because they want a high pick. Josh Dobbs is actually playing well. His stock's up, man. Maybe you actually get compensation for Josh Dobbs. There's no way anybody thought that at the beginning of the season. If you trade away Josh Dobbs, you're not even getting a 7th round pick. You're going to have to pay somebody to take that player.
Yeah.
But right now, the Jets could use Josh Dobbs.
They're not getting Cardinals are not getting rid of Josh Dobbs. They're so excited, man. Look at them beating the Cowboys when they should be tanking. Like, what's going on here? But they're riding a ride, and they're running the ball. They're running the ball well. They ran with against the Cowboys, who are supposed to be a formidable defense all around in all aspects. And James Conner, man, continues to be the gift that keeps giving against a matchup that was supposed to be tough. 14 carries, 98 yards, and a touchdown. And also leads the league in explosive runs, which is like runs over 15 yards. So if you're a Connor owner, you just got to keep on going. Like there were talks about, hey, do you not start Connor against the Cowboys? I think Connor right now is matchup proof, and you got to start him every week.
Couldn't agree more. Sunday Night Football, your Steelers shove it. What a wild one at the Raiders. They pull away 23-18, covered the 3-point dog spread under 44 cashes. Shove it. You start this one off for me.
Yeah, first of all, the Steelers got a lot to say, but I'll try to keep it short. First of all, Kenny Pickett, man, we talked about it, right? The spread was 1.5 touchdowns, and we said if a quarterback can't get you 2 touchdowns, like that guy should not be a quarterback on that team. Like that should be a solid lock-in bet. And sure enough, he gets 2 touchdowns, one to Freiermuth and one to the guy I've been talking about before, Calvin Austin, who's a speedster. So solid offensive performance. Not solid, but better than what it was in the first 2 weeks. Progress. That's exactly right. But what I want to highlight is the Najee Harris versus Jaylen Warren thing, man. So Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren, they run the same plays, but Jalen Hurts just looks better, dude. Same things, same concepts. Jalen Hurts
same bad offensive line,
and Jalen Warren is a playmaker, man. So I think that it's just gonna keep on shifting to Jalen Warren. He's gonna be that guy, but there's still that slim of hope that Najee Harris finds something to kind of in hopes that he will come back, which is that 4 explosive runs over 15 plus yards, which is second in the NFL. So there's that. And I think that maybe the Steelers look at that in the tape and say, hey, we can still continue to deploy. I would say that's a bad decision. Jalen Warren needs to be the guy. He needs to be a guy on your bench because he's the one that's going to be the starting running back for the Steelers.
Yeah, man. I totally agree with you. I think they love Najee. I think Najee is just a good human being. He's a good guy. I see a world where Warren will outsnap him before the end of the season. But even as bad as Najee becomes, I still think they're going to use Najee. I still think they've got plays for now. If Najee's the spell back to Warren, all of a sudden you'd be surprised, right? When the pressure's not on you to be the first down ball carrier or the second down ball carrier. First down, you have to get yards or it's automatically second and long, right? Second and long, and they call a run. Well, now you're the pressure's on to get at least 4 yards. Otherwise, you put your offense in a 3rd and long situation. But all of a sudden, you're the guy that comes in on 3rd and 4 and gets a draw when they think you're passing and you run it for 14 yards. Dude, Najee Harris, man. So, dude, I'm telling you, flip the script. Get Warren the first down, second down. Warren's a better pass catcher, but Najee needs to be the spellback that comes in spurts in ways that maybe you can get him involved. 4th and 1, short yardage situation. I don't know, but you can use him. He's talented. He's a freaking beast. He's massive, but yes, he's not it in terms of you can't hand him the football 7 yards behind the backfield where you're running like a stretch play when the offensive line can't protect for less than a second. He's getting hit 4 yards behind the backfield. That's not his fault, but those same plays, man, Jalen Warren will spin and then maybe get a yard. He may lose a yard, but he'll lose 1 yard where Najee will lose 4. So there is a difference, and I'm glad you're seeing it. Everybody's seeing it, man. It's visible. It's just literally in front of our eyes. Mike Tomlin, man, I don't know if Najee's his long lost son or something, but he's got to do something soon.
Yeah, they're just hopeful. Hopeful.
Let's talk about the Raiders real quick. Fire Josh McDaniels. There are very few decisions where I keep thinking about it, and the more I think about it, the worse it gets. You can always play hey, maybe he did this for this reason and it's justifiable, right? You can play the other side of the spectrum or the other side of the coin. This situation where he decided to kick the field goal, they get the penalty, so they get the first down, and he still decides to kick the field goal on 4th down is going to go down as the dumbest decision I've ever seen. This year, they're going to look back and everybody's going to be talking about how dumb this decision is. They're already talking about it. And his answer was even more dumb. He said you needed 2 possessions and they were down 8.
No.
Like
Math don't math.
that ain't it, Chief. Like that ain't it. At what point do you look yourself in the mirror after that interview once your like cameras are off and you're like, dude, how do I like come back from that? Because that's pretty bad. And it's like you went for it, they penalized you. You got the first down, and then you got put back in the same position, and you still kicked the field goal. Like God gave you an opportunity to make up for your mistake, right? God handed you a penalty for a first down, and you went back and did the exact same thing. Horrific. Fire him. Devontae Adams is a stud. Jacoby Myers, man, really, really good. Really nice second receiver. Really nice wide receiver 3, fringe wide receiver 2 for you just because of the targets. Raiders can't run the football worth of shit. They're going to be behind a lot, and if they're going to throw the football, Jimmy G can at least throw. Adams will get his, but Myers is there, and he will also get his. I love Jacoby Myers. He's a free agent in my other league as well. It's insane. So he is another guy that I absolutely think the sky's the limit for as a wide receiver too. 2 games on Monday Night Football. Let's wrap it up quickly. The Buccaneers and the Eagles in Tampa Bay. Eagles win this one 25-11, cover the 5-point spread, under 44 cashes. Eagles offense still does not look like they're humming on all cylinders. They don't look like the offense of last year. And this is another thing that I took away from the situation, which it's not all like this wasn't obvious because last year you had a world where based on the way this offense was going that Smith, Brown, and Goddard could all pop off in the same game. Right now, the Eagles have found a formula where they're running the football down your dick, and DeAndre Swift looks amazing. And they're going to continue to do that until somebody says, we can stop that. So what does that mean? That means less pass attempts for Jalen Hurts. What does that mean? A first-round wide receiver in A.J. Brown, a second, third-round wide receiver in Devontae Smith, fourth, fifth-round tight end in Dallas Goedert. Every single game, one of those guys, maybe 2 of those guys, is going to be irrelevant. Like, it's the San Francisco 49ers, but the worst thing here is it's not a system. They could be throwing the football a lot like they did last year, but they figured out that they can run the football at will right now with this offensive line, and they're not going to stop doing that. And all of those 1-yard Jalen Hurts rushing touchdowns are all touchdowns taken away from Dallas Goedert, AJ Green, Devontae Smith, right? So there's so many variables that are taking points and opportunities away from the skill positions that, yes, AJ Brown had a pop-off game. It was pretty obvious to assume that when he had 2 subpar games and he's a superstar receiver. But what does that mean? That coincides with the fact that Devontae Smith went 4 for 28, right? So you're going to have that with this offense. Goddard had his best game, and it was like 5 for 41. I think everybody needs to kind of temper their expectations of what Dallas Goedert was last year with Shane Steichen. And now this offense, a little bit different. They're having a hard time getting the tight end involved. So I am holding back on the fact that this offense isn't clicking on all cylinders, and I don't know a world where all of these pass catchers are like amazing every week just because right now they can run the football and they're going to continue to do that.
Yeah, I mean, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? And Swift is just like, just having his way in that offense. So just keep doing that, and they're going to keep running the ball. So I agree with you. For me, man, the Buccaneers, Mike Evans is him, consistent force. Congrats. You got him in the 6th, 7th round. You get to start him every week. 3 touchdowns and that one-handed catch, bro. Like, oh my God. Like it was crazy. It looked like a video game that like was lagging the way
like a glitch, like the glitch tackle, right? Yes, yeah. I thought the same thing.
And then, like, it was just amazing. And the fact that they're giving him the ball in red zone opportunities when they could give it to Rachaad White to try to run it in, but Mike Evans one-on-one, dude, big frame. Like that's what you should be doing, and that's what they're doing. So continue deploying Mike Evans.
Yeah, man. He's so scary because he's not getting 10 to 12 targets a game, but he's still producing because it's so easy for that offense to throw the football to him in the red zone because they don't have a tight end anymore. Kate Otton's there, but like he hasn't flashed yet. Godwin has never been a red zone threat because of his size and what he like the type of wide receiver that he is, right? So almost every red zone attempt, Rachaad White can't run the football because the offensive line sucks. Where is that ball going? It's going to Mike Evans. You have a better shot of throwing a 50-50 jump ball to Mike Evans than possibly Rachaad White running it in from the 1 3 times. So that's why Mike Evans is going to continue to be him. That's why I continue to try to send trade offers for Mike Evans and people just keep rejecting me. Mike Evans could be on a team that drafted 3 running backs. Your wide receiver 1 as a 7th round wide receiver, and he'd be, what is he? Wide receiver top 5 in wide receiver position this year. So you would be ecstatic with Mike Evans. He absolutely is him, man. He did have a couple of drops. It was rainy, but I do sense his hands being not as surefire as they once were. And I think a lot of times you see that with older receivers. I don't know what it is, like just age. Like that even happens to me sometimes where you throw me a football randomly and like 10 years ago, there's no way I'm dropping that. Now I'm like, I'm just kind of old. Like I just misjudged it. Sorry, man. Like my hands are good still. Don't judge me. Like that's what's happening with Mike Evans. And I don't judge him. He's older, but he's still a stud. He's still catching his touchdown passes, so he can do what he wants.
Yeah. Real quick, he had 10 targets. So that's something that,
okay. So he did it 10. Okay, 10 perfect. Targets.
Also, you sounded like RG3 talking about the even if I was there, I would do better or something like that, where he's comparing himself in that situation, and everyone else is like, bro, you
no,
like,
yeah, you remember
if there's one quarterback that probably would not do well in that system, it would do worse than Zach Wilson, it's probably RG3.
Dude, that's so funny you said that, because that is what he was doing. Wasn't he talking about that system? And he's like, you see quarterbacks out there, Matt Ryan, Phillip Rivers, myself. The NFL just doesn't want to give us enough. I'm like, bro, chill, fam. Chill. You ain't all that. You're all that at Baylor. You got hurt. Like, come on, man. Your time has passed.
Right.
Last game, Monday Night Football, Rams Bengals in Cincinnati, rematch of Super Bowl 2 years ago. The Bengals win a pretty ugly game, 19-16. Joe Burrow guts it out, under 45.5 cashes. Let's talk about the running back, Shova. Talk to me about the Bengals and Joe Mixon.
Yeah, I think Joe Mixon was like a buy low target, right? Like in the last 2 weeks, a lot of people don't like him because of his efficiency, but the guy just finds ways to get into the end zone. And so I think that he had a pretty good game, 19 carries, 65 yards. He's a touchdown threat. Again, the reason I'm saying this is because he's better than Najee Harris. And so I still like Joe Mixon more than Najee Harris. And I think that if you have Joe Mixon, you continue to start him in hopes that he gets you this is Joe Mixon's stat right here. 19 carries, 65 yards, and a touchdown.
Boom. Yeah, that is spot on Joe Mixon stat line there. Let's talk about the running back on the other side. Kyren Williams, not a great day. Weird that the number one running back for their team is their punt returner also. That seems like you're playing with fire a little bit. But as the punt returner, he still saw 100% of snap counts for the running back. How insane is that? This guy returns their punts, and he played every single running back snap. Every single running back snap. Granted, he had 10 carries for 38 yards in an ugly game. The Bengals defense is pretty good. Granted, Matthew Stafford, every pass to Kyren Williams was like 8 yards over his head. Didn't have a shot with catching any of them except one where he dropped it. But 2 of his 7, like 2 catches and 7 targets, I would say 4 of those 7 targets were just not catchable at all. But it's encouraging to see that they design plays on blitzes for like swing passes to Kyren Williams. Stafford loves to target him. He's got 7 targets. So Kyren Williams, to me right now, Zach Moss territory where there's nobody else. 100% of RB snaps, man. So he is deployable all the time. Don't even worry about it. Put him in your lineup.
Yeah. That offensive line was just really bad. And defensive line for Bengals was like Hendrickson. Yeah. It was like all over the place. So dude, it's one of those games.
Yeah, it was tough. I mean, and I think that goes hand in hand with the Puka, the Tutus. Like, I think people that started those guys were expecting bigger outputs. But yeah, when Stafford's tackle on his blind side cannot hold Hendrickson for even more than a second, like you have no chance. You have absolutely no chance. So it was just one of those. What a wild week. So many upsets. Freaking the Miami Dolphins lineup could have won you fantasy by themselves. Insane. Will we see another team score 70 points this year, Shove?
No, we will never see that.
What is the second most points the Miami Dolphins will score this year?
45.
45. That's fair. I was having a huge debate with Jake Flincham about Tua and the Dolphins and where he views them as and where I view them as. And I think, let's put it all to rest and just look in week 4 when they play the Buffalo Bills. This will be a good matchup and a good test for that defense, for that offense, and for all parties to see what legitimacy truly is.
True. What do you think? What do you think the highest points that the Dolphins will score this year?
I think they'll hit the 40s again. I think they'll hit the 40s maybe multiple times. They just, again, when you're playing a bad defense, that offense cannot be stopped. Like you can't. And like I imagine that offense against the Vikings defense, bro. We have nobody with speed on our defense. Like nobody. We would get annihilated. So yeah, I think they'll hit 40. I do think, again, the jury's still out. We saw things like this last year from the Dolphins. So I just want to temper everybody's expectations. But week 4, Dolphins, Bills. That is going to be a primetime matchup. Can't wait to see the results. Again, thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the like, hit the subscribe button. If you're following us, follow us on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. If you're listening, leave us a 5-star review. It is greatly appreciated. Help spread the word about the podcast. I'm Sweet Cart. That's Shovit. We're the only playbook. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Have a wonderful, wonderful week. Take care.